everyone, welcome to the HumanizEDU Podcast. I'm Sandy Herrera. My sister, Dr. Stacy Herrera, and I are on a mission to bring the human back to the center of education.
Through our authentic, human-centered conversations, we hope to inspire you to take ownership of your life, mental well-being, and culture transformation journey.
Our conversations range from the wild and windy roads our guests have navigated throughout their careers, to the inspiring stories of overcoming the myriad of challenges within education today.
We hope you'll join us as we bring on exceptional guests who are creating a ripple of impact within the world of education, making a difference in the lives of students and staff every day.
Hello, everyone. I am super excited that I have Miss Anna Slidhing on our podcast today. A longtime educator, a dear friend of mine. Our kids went to school together. We sat on a school organization team together at a high school in Nevada, and just lots of cool connections. So I would love for you to tell us a little bit about your background and why you're passionate about education.
I knew that I needed to be an educator since I was little. I was one of those little girls that would set up my stuffed animals and my Barbie dolls, and I would teach them, set up my little classroom. So I knew that this was where I was supposed to be. There have been times, education is rough. There have been times where I have looked at other careers, but I just keep on coming back to here because this is where I get the satisfaction and fulfillment for my life, is working with kids. I had taught high school Spanish for about 16 years before I started exploring administration. So I am in my 6th year as an assistant principal. I've spent primarily all of my career in either middle school or high school. So I am now currently in a elementary school because it is my next goal to become an elementary school principal. So I have found a job with an elementary principal who's really fantastic. Her and I are a great fit. And so she's teaching me by example how many great things are going on at that school so that I can carry on some of those things to my next school when I do become a principal.
I love it. I love it. There's so many good things going on in education below the surface, right? That like what's newsworthy right now in education is the hot mess of crazy. And yet I do want to talk a little bit about that, but I also want to talk about what's going well. And just like give us a story of something that's happened recently at your school that shows that there are good things happening in the world of education.
What's going well? I can speak, at least for my location, that parents trust the teachers. I think that this is unique to our particular community. Our school site has been there. It's been the hub of the community for decades. And many of the current parents had been students of the school before. And there is this sense of unity between the community and the school. And the data that I use to explain this to other people, because where the rest of the nation is having these chronic absenteeism, huge problems of parents struggling to get their kids to school, or even just understanding the importance of school attendance. Our school is at about a 7% chronic absenteeism, which is even lower than some of the magnet schools here in Las Vegas. And I really attribute it to the trust that the parents have with the teachers. We've got some great staff who have really tried to make meaningful connections with the families in their classroom, right down to learning basic phrases in Spanish so that parents can feel comfortable and feel like the teacher is really trying to make those connections and to be part of that student's lives. Mm-hmm. And by doing so, the parents are okay sending their kids to school every day. You mentioned the hot mess. We're in a hugely Hispanic community, and The first couple of days where there were some national announcements that were made, there was a lot of fear, and our absenteeism was really high. But I think once parents remembered that the teachers really are creating a safe space for students, that they're feeling comfortable to send them to school, knowing that they are going to be safe. They're going to be care, from something as big as what's going on in the national news to something as small as, will the teacher really call if my child has a fever? Because we tell parents, send your kid sick. If it's a tummy ache, it might be anxiety. Let us work through that.
Mhm.
Really do get sick, we're going to call you and we're going to and you can trust us that we're going to do that. But if it's just that they are feeling some anxiousness over something that's going on in their lives, send them to school. Let us be part of that healing process with the kids, and the parents trust us with that. So that is something that I can speak to, at least in our own location, that
Mhm.
brings a lot of joy to my life in seeing that connection between community and the students and the staff.
I love it. So we're gonna go deep fast in this conversation. You brought it up, and I don't want to gloss over it because it's real and it's alive for a lot of people. Um, and this was phrased to me yesterday from a fellow entrepreneur, from a conversation she had with one of her best friends who is a high school teacher. And we were talking about the mental health crisis in our schools, and we were talking about active shooter drills, and we were talking about, the like what that's like to be an educator right now. And that as educators, you're trained to, in her words, take a bullet for these kids, right? You're trained to keep them safe. And then with news headlines and things happening around the world when it comes to deportation, and we expect, it's like, you have been trained to protect these kids with your life, and then to go like, oh sure, then you can just come to, like, that doesn't happen when we as humans, when we have that protection mechanism kick in, right, and trained, and we love our students and we want to protect them from everything. It's like that, it's sending this whole stressful mixed message to our educators of like, wait a minute, you can't just take my child. I mean, 99% of the educators that I've worked with over the past 20 years, um, say that their students are their kids. Like, it's just how you refer to them. And I had one of the principals that I worked with, he called them his babies, and he was a high school principal. His babies, these are my babies. And he's like, not in a condescending way, just that's how I view every student on my campus. And so when we think about that trust built, right, between you and the community and the families, knowing that, like, that element of trust, that's how we begin to, in your words, be part of a team to heal the traumas. And I think that's a beautiful, like, example of really how you guys are mitigating the mental health crisis, because it's huge.
And to follow up on what you said about how we're not trained to take a bullet for a kid. We are trained to keep everyone in the room safe, including ourselves.
Right.
It's just that, like you said, these
Mhm.
kids are our lives. And that's why the majority of us chose the teaching profession, is because we want to make a difference in these kids' lives.
Right.
So it's not that we're trained to take a bullet, it's that we know in our minds we would.
Yeah.
We know that if there, all of these other measures and steps that we are trained for, we have that in the forefront of our heads, that we would be the ones who would take the bullet first. And so it's not like, we're going to trainings and they're saying, okay, you.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
No, but in our heads, that's what's
Mhm.
going through. And when you talk about the mental health crisis, stuff like that is very real for teachers as much as it is for students, because we do see it on the news. We do know that it's a very real possibility. And so we do play that out. We do play that out in our heads all the time. Even when we're in our own staff meetings, we're thinking, okay, what would happen if something, what would we do if something happened in this building? Just because we do have to do these drills so often that it really is in the forefront of our brain is how to keep these kids safe. And so with recent political actions, it really is interesting to me on how do they expect that we're just going to here, all of you men with big guns, come on into our building and take our children. I don't think that most educators are going to just open up the doors to that. I that we will take every legal action we possibly can to say this is not the place. The school is not the place to do this. This is not, we're not doing this here. This school is a safe place, period. Because we have worked so hard at so many other aspects of the mental health. We want to protect that space to continue to be a safe space. This is not where we're doing any of that. This is where we learn. This is where we come to grow together and to be unified in making our lives better. That's what this space is.
Exactly. And when we curate that on purpose, right? We curate those environments and we create those connections with families and with the students. That's when the learning happens. And yet with this undercurrent of fear, let's talk about the adult mental health side of things. In your experience and in your experience overall, not necessarily just in your current building, but when you are connecting with colleagues and you're hearing the stories of the undercurrent of the mental health crisis, what are you hearing? Because teachers show up every day, educators show up every day to do their best, right? Yet what's that undercurrent?
And I'm speaking for myself and for my own personal experiences and with my social circles of other educators. I think that the largest undercurrent is actually the lack of respect that we get from the community. I think that's number one. We know what we're doing in the classroom. We know that we're doing what's best for kids. We know that we're going in and that we're trying to teach them and that we're trying to get them to academic skills where they can be successful with whatever they choose in the future. We know that. We know that we're taking care of the kids. But there is this undercurrent of disrespect. And so teachers get treated, whether they're just, in whatever social circle they're in, and they say, oh, if there's not other teachers to back them up, they say, oh, I'm a teacher. There's sometimes eye rolling and people are like, why did you choose that? And then also disrespect just coming from parents, because parents have been told that all of these bad things are happening in classrooms, so they just assume that bad things are happening in the classrooms and they just come in fighting with the teacher, and it just adds that extra stress that really makes that profession very difficult. That's the largest undercurrent. And then there's also other undercurrents, where there's tension between administrators and teachers. Sometimes I call myself a mitigator because I'm having to mitigate the policies that are coming from the legislature with what I really know are the needs of the classroom. And so my job as the administrator is to somehow make it all work, where I know that these policies coming down from the legislature are not the best for kids, but I'm having to make it work because I've got to comply with that law. And so that really is a heavy stress on teachers too, is they feel that pressure coming down from above, when we all know that sometimes these laws are not the best for the kids. And and what we know as the community what we should be doing versus what everyone's telling us that we should be doing.
Right. So what's being done to help the mental health crisis?
Oh, for teachers or for students? Where do you want me to start first?
Both, wherever you want to start.
But with teachers, I can say that one of the benefits of COVID is that we got to a place where we can honor people's illnesses. When a teacher is sick, or for whatever reason needs time off, we're a lot more accommodating now because of COVID and because of the lessons that we learned, that we just need time to set aside our physical health and our physical needs in order to achieve healthy mental health.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's a lot better understanding of when teachers need to take time off. I still think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done on what the definition of self-care is. Self-care is not having the money to go for a spa weekend every Saturday. No, self-care is, prioritizing your time and your resources so that you can go to the doctor and get the medicine that you need, or that you can get your tires changed and rotated so that you're not worried when you're driving to school every day. Things like that. Like, that's self-care, is putting sustainable practices into place that makes the longevity of your life and your physical and mental health just last a little bit longer. This is my dog. As it pertains to kids, again, going back to like what people think is going on in the classroom versus what's really going on in the classroom. Restorative justice is actually one of the most empathetic tools that we can teach our kids. People think that restorative justice is where, we're just not giving kids consequences and we're just letting them get away with anything. That's not how it is. Restorative justice is actually very healing for a child's mental health as well, because you still get the consequences. We are not taking consequences away, but we're putting all of these pieces into place to teach kids empathy and forgiveness and how to say, I'm sorry, that makes their mental health in a better place as well. And so I love those restorative practices because it does help improve kids' own, when we go back to sustainability, it teaches kids those sustainable methods of being able to maintain their own mental health.
Yeah.
And I think that that's important. Just teaching kids empathy is so important to their own mental health, because now they can look and have multiple perspectives of what's going on with them, and then use tools to identify those emotions and work through those emotions in a way that's not going to be harmful to other people.
Exactly. And creating that psychological safety and learning those skills as a young human, right? It allows you to then cultivate those neural pathways as you grow into an adult, which then helps you be more productive as an employee, or as a business owner, or as a parent. But if we're hardwiring those in as for our children and teaching those skills,
Absolutely.
Positive ripple.
One of the things that I say the most, and I would say this with my high school students, with my middle school students, and now with my elementary school students, it's okay to be mad. It's okay to be mad. It's okay to accept those feelings and to recognize that you're angry. And yes, absolutely. Let's name this emotion and let's identify where this emotion is coming from. But these are the actions that are appropriate to take when you're feeling this. Right. And yeah, those are skills that will last kids their lifetimes. If they can identify, like, yeah, it's okay to be angry, especially for us women, where I think a lot of times we've been told, oh, you can't be angry. You can't be angry. Oh, no, absolutely. You can be angry.
Yeah.
But here are the pathways that you can take to help identify, recognize those triggers, and put sustainable practices into place so that you can manage that anger. Not just suppress it. You're not supposed to feel angry. No, you can feel angry. This is how you can handle it.
Do you think schools are doing enough to address the root causes of the mental health issues, or just managing symptoms?
I'm going to say this only because just yesterday I was reading another thread. We have a great Facebook group here in Las Vegas. It's called CCSD Parents. And the moderators are fantastic. And because the moderators are fantastic, people come to this thread, I think, with a lot more respect. And they're able to share more vulnerable feelings in a way that's not going to be harmful to other people, like we see on social media. And yesterday I was reading this thread about whether or not we should have a longer class day. And I was surprised that most parents didn't think that we needed a longer class day, but most teachers do think that we need a longer class day.
Hmm.
And I think part of that is in part because teachers want more time to not just cover curriculum, but to also cover these skills of emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Teachers want to be able to have that, like we said earlier, the parents trust that we're going to teach these kids how to all kinds of things when they're
Be a good human.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and,
Yeah.
and learning reading and math. When a kid gets frustrated learning that, doing whatever it is that they're learning, and they get frustrated and they hit these roadblocks because, yeah, school is hard. Teachers want to have time to work through those emotions with the student. But
Mm-hmm.
because of our lack of time, teachers feel very pressured to just keep moving on. Oh, I'm sorry you're frustrated. Work on this for a couple minutes instead, rather than actually having that opportunity to sit down and work through those big emotions and work through and teaching them how to do hard things. So I think that teachers are doing the best that they can with the resources that they have. I feel like as administrators, we're doing the best that we can with resources that we have, but
Mm-hmm.
we need more. I mean, we need school psychologists on every campus. We need social workers on every campus. We need counselors on every campus. And because of multiple onion layers, those things just aren't happening. And so we're doing the best that we can, but it's not enough. We need to continue to work with the community on providing resources outside of school as well, because kids just aren't getting it at school alone.
Do you think the adults are living it?
The
In terms
adults,
of
be specific. Which adults?
the adults in our schools, are the adults in our schools living from a place of high EQ and being able to model those things? Because I know I wasn't taught that in school. I mean, not directly. It was through, sports and different activities that I learned more about emotional intelligence. It was through different things. Whereas now I think there's a lot of us as adults that are unpacking our own wounds, regardless of industry, right? Regardless of our job. We as adults are trying to figure out why we keep reacting to that thing. Why, when a kid doesn't bring a pencil to school, are we angry, right? Speaking of it being okay to be angry, and is that really what you're angry about? Or what? And I'll have teachers describe it as disrespect. I'm like, explain to me how that feels like disrespect to you. Like, let's talk through that a little bit. And what I find is that often educators haven't had their own training in trauma informed mental health care for themselves, let alone to be able to show up and do it for their students.
And I would be interested to know if there has been research that has quantified that in any
Mm-hmm.
numerical form. Because I can think of some educators who are highly emotional
Mm-hmm.
intelligent who have done the work. And oftentimes it is because of their own trauma
Mm-hmm.
that they can identify some of these things in the students that they're with.
Yep.
I can name some educators who I would not want my children in their classrooms
Mm-hmm.
because they, and what I see, what I identify as low emotional intelligence is when a teacher is constantly blaming everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's where I identify. And there are some teachers who, like I said, I would not want my own children in those classrooms because they aren't in a place where they can take ownership for what's going on in that classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that's a hard one for administrators and parents because we need teachers, and that teacher might be really great at covering content, but
Mm-hmm.
without empathy, you don't. It's hard for an administrator to place children in that classroom knowing that they're not going to be cared for at the same level as somebody else. Um, I don't think that there's not a lot of policies in place to to mandate any type of um, trauma recognition like that in a teacher's lives.
Do you
It,
think there needs to be a mandate in order for it to be the norm?
no, I don't think that, I don't know. I really don't, because a lot of times, like, right, multiculturalism, that needs to be a class that needed to end up being mandated to teach
Mhm.
multiculturalism. Same with family engagement. That the state legislature decided that it was a skill that was not coming naturally, and so they needed to mandate it. I don't
Mm.
think that mandating anything is ever appropriate, but
Yeah.
it's also not in our administrative handbook on how to
Right.
identify teachers who are not trauma informed.
Hmm.
And so it takes a lot of careful steps, even for me as a teacher. And I have done this. I mean, excuse me, as an administrator, I have done this where I have teachers who I try my best to develop a friendly enough relationship and a trusting enough relationship that I can say, "Hey, do you know that our health insurance actually does cover the first 5 sessions with a counselor for free?"
Hmm.
I've done it myself. It really does work. Like,
Yeah.
I you should look into that.
Yeah.
Um, that takes a lot of work on administrators' part to get to that
Mhm.
point where the teacher will trust them enough to hear that without
Mhm.
being offended.
Yeah, that's focusing on workplace culture, right? And looking at our schools as a workplace and being able to have that collegiality to the point where you do have a trusted workplace that is psychologically safe for people to own who they show up as, right? And be able to say, I'm having a rough day today. Can I just need someone to come in and co-teach with me. Like, I've got the content, I've got the lessons done. I don't have the EQ today to hold space for these kids. And I know that they're going to walk all over me. And it's that level of self-awareness, right? It takes a really trusted workplace versus the narrative that we'll often hear in teachers' mind is I can do it. I can suck it up. I can make it through. I can, like, this resiliency, perseverance, like bravado that is great and healthy, and yet it's so exhausting on our nervous systems. Like, and if we just had that administrator like you're talking about that I can just go to and say, I need 5 minutes of vent or whatever, right? That then we actually curate these classroom environments that are healthy, and we can move forward together, like actually as a team. And so these are the things that I'm hearing you say is like, when you are in partnership, when you have trust, when you have psychological safety, when you have empathy. And so if you were to wave a magic wand and if you could have one policy change, right, that you could advocate for, that you believe would address the root causes of the mental health issues for the adults that would have the positive ripple to the students, is there one that comes to mind?
No, and again, like I've already said that I don't know that mandating things is always the best solution, because you don't want someone to feel like they're being forced to have empathy. I mean, values, it's hard to legislate values, and having that, striving for that type of culture and climate like you just described takes a lot of core values. um those are all words that you've taught me. It really does take a lot of core values, and it's not something that you can mandate. It's something that takes a really good leader to so that other people want to buy into that, and other
So is
teachers.
it training the leaders? Is it training the leaders on
I
that?
think it might be training. You know what? As I'm thinking this through in my head, because I've never thought of this is a new question that you've posed, and it's going to stick with me for the next couple of days. Um, it might be training the leaders, and it also, and I think that because at leadership, that's where you can have a gateway
Mm,
to start requiring some of these actions. You can't be a principal unless you really do buy into what the district's values are of, um, teaching empathy and holding empathy for the kids in your building and the teachers in your building.
mhm,
Just reflecting on some of the courses that I've taken to be certified within CCSD to be an administrator.
mhm.
I think that there have been some good conversations there. So maybe it would be the leader. Maybe it does need to be the responsibility of the building leader and something that is taught for them in order to recognize that empathy. It takes a lot of time. I know that there's not a lot of time during the school day, and then teacher contracts, they usually will just, they'll leave the building. And so it does take a lot of that extra. It takes a lot of that extra. Going back to my own principal, she has developed these great relationships with with teachers. And so when one teacher is in surgery, she actually will go and take them a meal when they're recovering from surgery. And, or if there's something else that's going on, like she takes her own personal time to be part of the teachers in their own personal lives.
Yeah.
And then that is what has developed these workplace relationships, is because the teachers know, like, hey, she actually does care that I've been in surgery. She just brought me her own home cooked meal
Yeah.
to my house. And that in itself might be uncomfortable to some teachers, but it's just become a thing. It's part of the culture and climate at the school where I'm at, that that the principal is going, she's not asking these questions about your personal life because she's trying to be nosy. She's asking them because she genuinely cares.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So what's your wish for the future of education? You could wave a magic wand. I'm giving you lots of magic wands today.
Oh, well, my wish for, I have lots of wishes for education. I think going back to these restorative practices, like being able to teach kids, how to recognize emotions, how to name emotions, how to see what's triggering those emotions, and how to put sustainable practices into place to deal with those emotions. I do think that there is place for that in education, and I do hope that the future of education allows us to teach kids hard things side by side with these um, emotional practices as well. The workplace is ever changing.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish that in education, we could have as much fluency in these changes, that we could have policies and practices in place so that our systems and structures can be as fluid as the workplace is, so that we can teach resilience to those kids and teach those cognitive skills and those critical thinking skills. Because the skills that I could teach a child right now are not going to be the skills that are needed in 5 years in the workplace,
Right.
because it's changing so quickly. So
Mm-hmm.
I wish that we could change education and have that type of
Fluidity.
responsiveness to the workplace. But policies in education are just so belabored and take so long, and that's how come we've been stuck in the same model for the decades that we've been stuck in the same model. So
Mm-hmm.
I wish that we could have that same responsiveness to, as the workplace has, to what is needed, and then to pair that with those emotional needs of the students.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Anything else you want to share? Anything else top of mind that we didn't cover before I ask you a fun question?
Oh, no, because now I'm just curious what the fun.
I love asking this question of everyone.
No,
Well,
you better. No, I feel like that last statement it pretty much covers what's in my head right now. I'm sure tomorrow morning I'll wake up and be like, oh, I should have said that to Sandy.
you can always add it in, and we can always meet again. But fun question: what was your favorite childhood toy, game, or adventure?
Oh, okay. I'm an extrovert. I mean, always to this day is hanging out with friends. I
Mm,
feel like, especially in high school, like those are my favorite childhood memories, is being in high school and being in music theater and being able to have those social connections with my friends. When we were, putting together a production, or, that we're working towards something, but I'm with my friends and I get to do
yeah.
it with my friends. And that's still how I am today.
Mm,
That is one of my just core characteristics is that if I'm working on something, I want to do it with friends. So that is my memory I have from school. That's something that I still have today.
I love it. I love bringing forward the science of play and how a lot of what we did as children is kind of a cornerstone of almost our superpower as adults. So, Anna, thank you so much for recording this podcast with me, and continue to listen. We will have more amazing guests on in the future, and follow along as we proactively solve the mental health crisis in our schools. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for listening, learning, and growing with us here on the HumanizEDU podcast as we reignite the love of learning.
Remember to give us a like and subscribe to hear more. Wishing you a beautiful day on purpose.